Hello guys. I'm just editing something and like getting my paperwork together. We have somebody live. Do you want to chat in the comments or text in the comments? I'll start. This is the sweater that I wore to jail. It's also like the sweater that I got for my son's when my son was born, when I was pregnant. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to do what I always do on these lives. Say hey to my kids, let them know what mommy's been up to, and then maybe get you guys some info and go from there. I've been trying to get this room set up how I want it. And I've got like camera equipment over here. I've got like work over here. And yeah, I don't know. I just like, it's not how I want it yet. And then I've got like a table, like a work table over here, but I'm getting there. And then every day I will like work and then I'll, mess up my area and I have to clean it all again. And just reminds me of being a teacher. So I was a high school history teacher. Not for a full 17 years, but I started teaching 17 years ago. And so I used to always really, really, really try to clean my desk before at the end of every day, so that when I came back in the next day, things were kind of like set. So let me just set the room. Here's what I have to do. That back there is my board. And if you guys saw it in like previous videos, it was wild. So Ellie, Evie, and anybody who is a young person watching, the best way to plan your days is to write everything down at the beginning of the week, like all the things you want to do. Circle the one thing, like if you do 10 things, circle the one thing that if you get that one thing done in that week, it's like a big rock. It will move the dial the most. So for me this week, it was, mommy's been going to therapy, and I'm going to talk about that after, like when we get to the grown up part of this conversation. You girls are going to jump off because that's going to be the rule. You only get to watch for the first couple of minutes. And then as soon as mommy starts talking about adult things, you guys pop off. And you could be watching this when you're like 35 for all I know, and then you can watch it. But this is my way of like saying hello to you and letting you know what I'm up to, and then trying to teach you guys because I'm not there. So one, I'm still doing the hair thing where I like wrap it up. And last night I did it in even tighter curls. And so I'm going to try to grow my hair back out. Mommy lost a lot of hair this year. So I'm going to start taking vitamins and like see if I can grow it out a little bit more. I'm not going to color it. Remember I went blonde for a little bit? It's because I thought I was going to go gray. And I do have some grays, but I'm just kind of embracing them. And I'm going to keep this brown for as long as I can. Okay, that's girl stuff. But back to the board. So what mommy had before was just like all of this stuff. And it was really overwhelming me. And I had all my papers everywhere. And so what I did was I went and I broke it down. And then I have just like I would in my classroom. We're getting ready to do a podcast in here. So we've got chairs. I've got, you can't even see it. This is everything that used to be on the board, just like big, but I took it and I wrote it down by section. And then what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm just picking one of these each week because it's a lot, right? And I'm like, what's one thing on here that I can do? So like that I did yesterday because I had it on my list here. Where was it? I had it here Sunday and I erased that. And then just so I can remember what I got done, I go over here, I check it off, and then I'm like, done. And then I do that, check, check. So I wrote those. Oh, you know what? Check. I did all of those. So technically I could like take that and throw it away. But because I finished the stuff on that I needed to do, I'm just going to leave it there because I have to follow up on it. But I took the initial step to do what needed to be done. So then the next thing I'm doing is just like chunking it out. So like for YouTube, I've got to do some covers. And then so the other thing I'm doing, instead of like writing it all on the board, making a mess, I'm writing it on here and then taping it underneath. That way I can move it. So like this is something mommy's going to talk about with the adults later. It is some reports that I'm trying to get from the county. And I was reading it and I thought that they didn't give me the reports I wanted. But when I read it, it says, based on the information provided, the County of Monterey Department of Social Services is unable to confirm or deny if there are records responsive to this request. So this is a thing that Mommy did for the County of Monterey Department of Social Services. Regardless, and it was in, the early years when I was the first year that I was fighting for you girls, trying to figure out, why did they take you? How am I going to get you back? What's going on? And, down the line someday, when all the documentaries on this come out and we see what actually happened in our country, I want you girls and your brother to go and look back and be like, okay, our mom didn't just sit around like today. The green things are things I still need to do. So because I can't pull it out and write it that I did it, what I'm doing is just kind of like with my dry erase on the outside of my binder, I'll kind of do, I shouldn't do green because green means it's done. I should do I'll do red because it's in action, right? So then Mommy knows that those are records from Dare County that I'm waiting on. Or what I could do is just write waiting. And actually, that reminds me, I need to write a reply. So over here, I'm going to because I'm going to get this done tonight. Dare County, PR stands for Public Records. So baby dolls, if you ever want to find anything out from the government, it's called a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act request. And then if you want to find out from a state or a local entity, it's called a public records request. So Mommy's got a couple of public records requests that I'm waiting for. And then once I have all that stuff, I'll be able to submit it to the judge and be like, hey, can I start seeing my kids again? Because all these records show the truth of what I've been saying for a long time. And all these letters from all these people who support us and who talk about the type of mommy I am, say that something went wrong and we're going to figure it out. So got to do that tonight. The Dare County, what's called a PR, public record release. And then I need to do my dispatches so if you ever call the police, if the police ever called, they're supposed to have body cameras or dispatch logs, and you can actually request those. And so I hope you're not watching this on social media, but there are dispatch calls of people calling into 911, and you can 911, what's your emergency? All of those should be recorded. That way you can go back. And for example, if there's a police report or just anything, you can look at the timing of the call and what was said by the caller versus what was actually documented in the police report versus what somebody may have said on the stand. So this is how lawyers or people who are if you're wrongly accused of something like Mommy was, you can go back and you can say, well, the dispatch from this date, this is the transcript. The police report doesn't match the transcript. And then what this person said on the stand under oath doesn't match either of those. So which is incorrect? The person under oath saying, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. The police report or the medical report or whatever it is, or the actual dispatch log. We're moving into a generation, I think, where there's just everything is digitized, everything is recorded, everything is monitored, our phones, everything. So always going back to that raw data is so important. And that's something that Mommy used to teach my students, was even if you're going to use ChatGPT, even if you're going to use all the different technologies that are out there, always go back to the raw data. If you are citing a source, go and find that actual article, go and find that author, go and find the year that it was written, go and find the year that it was revised, et cetera, et cetera. Because that's you can't just trust what's on the internet anymore, and you can't trust technology to do your work for you. So we're going to do it old school. Mommy's going to teach you guys how to go, and do your research, because that's what Mommy does. Mommy's a researcher, right? I'm a historian. So the other night when I was going through my records that I've been compiling to be able to see you guys, I noticed that I had this public records release from December 3rd, 2024. So this is like a year ago, yeah, over a year ago. And I had filed it in December, which I should have filed it sooner, but it was part of the reason why the those one supervisors wouldn't let me come back to you, because I said, hey, you guys aren't following like policies for domestic violence and sexual assault and child reporting. So like, what are we going to do about that? And then they're like, oh, you're not a good candidate. Turns out the reason why mommy wasn't a good candidate for a lot of those supervisors who are watching us is because they get paid the more mommy does a bad job. And what's crazy is mommy wasn't doing a bad job. Mommy was watching you guys play, changing diapers, doing the things that I always do. But they are incentivized, which means they are rewarded when they say that a parent is doing a bad job. Now, the reason why they're rewarded is because they get money from the federal government and from the state government. And that is why mommy is able to go and get all of these records, because our tax dollars pay for that. So I know that's a lot, but the reason why I want you guys to know this is so that you don't just think that mommy sat around, not fighting for you. I have been fighting for you. And it took mommy, 2 years now to realize that the system was always stacked against us, and it's stacked against us in different ways. And if I had to go back in time and do it over again, what would I have done on that night that the police came? I would have done the same thing, babies, because mommy had prayed for us to be safe, and I didn't know how to get us safe on my own. And when the police came, I trusted them, and I trusted your dad, and I didn't think that it would turn out like this. But in the last 2 years, I have learned so much about the generational cycles that I grew up in with Grandma Nat and Grandma Baylor and, the aunts on that side, and even Grandpa Greg. And then I've learned about the generational cycles that your dad grew up with, and how at a certain point, somebody has to be the one to say like, okay, stop. We're not going to live like this anymore. And that was the decision that I made that night, because the last thing I ever wanted was for you guys to leave the house. And that was the choice I was given, was mommy goes or mommy and daddy go. And if mommy and daddy both go, then you guys would also go and into these social services. And I think you're old enough now to sort of realize what that is. I remember we had some students when I was teaching at your school who we knew were in social services in CPS care. And they were kiddos who we were like getting clothes for and, just making sure that they were taken care of. And this is a very real thing. And I want you girls to start to be aware of that not all government actors are good and not all programs are good. And I am praying that you are learning that when we were in those supervised visits and you were having to like write me notes in crayon and I was like, scribble it out, we're going to get in trouble. You realize that that's not normal and that's not okay. And what those people did is wrong. And mommy and a lot of other parents have been exposing this for the better part of 2 years. And there's hundreds of mommies just like me. Actually, I'm going to show you guys something while we're doing this, and then I'll finish up with my report, which is basically the report that I didn't get for you guys is, regardless, please be advised that personal caseload records are not discoverable through a public records request. Such records are protected by Welfare Institutions Codes 827 and may only be accessed by authorized individuals as outlined in sections 82781AR. So mommy is now in the part of my healing where when I got this in December, when did I get this? I got this in December 3rd, 2024. I was so distraught and just literally, honey, sorry, trying to survive. I didn't read that there was more to it. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to get these reports. What am I gonna do? And now here I am a year later looking back at the same thing. Is why it really pays to like, process your feelings and do our tapping. Like, even though I'm really upset right now, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. even though what happened to our family is very unfair, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I'm mad about this time that I didn't get to spend with my mom or my brother or my sister, or as a family, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Remember, and we go through and we do our tapping, we just kind of let our bodies process the emotions that we're having so that we can like calm ourselves down and actually look at whatever it is that we wanted to look at. Mommy was not doing a very good job of that last year. I was still, pretty scattered, trying to figure out what life was going to look like, not being a mommy full time. And my whole life was like, bracketed around you kiddos. So I was kind of flailing. But with all that said, I didn't read the fine lines. And that's why mommy really wanted to teach you girls those grounding exercises. And I hope that you'll teach your brother this. Like if he's getting upset, right? Just a little bit of tapping. And we say whatever our problem is. So like, even though I'm really upset that a year ago I had this in my hands, but I didn't read it because I was in chaos, I was in trauma, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Or you can do the exercise where we name our emotion, like we give it a color and we give it a color, a taste, a texture, a smell, and then we transform it. So like, I think one of them was like a stinky, it was like a eggs and it was green and it was like foamy and it was like hard. And it's like, okay, I hear you that's your emotion. That's kind of how mommy feels about this whole family court thing. And so it's like, okay, let's see if we can transform it into something else. All right. So mommy is going to make the choice to look at this situation through the lens of how what our family went through and mommy's unique skills as a historian and as a hobbyist podcaster is helping us get the information out to so many other families who feel really confused by the institutional betrayal of our government and the services that are meant to protect the most vulnerable among us, which are our women and children, quite honestly, especially our babies, especially our kids. So I'm going to take that like icky, green, foamy, coarse, scratchy, smelly, uncomfortable, makes me sick to my stomach emotion. And because I've already given it a color, I'm going to just set it over there. I'm going to get out my paintbrush, or I'm going to get out my puffy paints or my magic eraser, whatever instrument you want, to your typewriter, whatever, your piece of paper and pen, whatever you want to create with. And we're just going to start making a new feeling. And so the green is going to turn into like a fluffy pink, because that's like makes mommy think of my heart, and you kiddos are my heart. And so this time apart, these 2 years apart, broke my heart into a million pieces, but seeing how I'm now able to use what happened to us to help others kind of stitches my heart back together. And so it's like a pink. And then the feeling of it is actually going to be like, not like a Band-Aid, but like that wrap. It's like an ace bandage that you go like when you get your blood drawn or something. And it's like, or like if you have a sports injury and you're just kind of wrapping it. It's like, it's not broken. It's just something that just kind of needs to be brought back together and healed. So it's like pink and soft and it's bound together and it's brought back so that it can heal. And it smells like springtime, because it's almost spring and I can just smell the flowers starting to rot, like grow, and I can smell the earth coming back to life, and I could feel the warmth. And then it tastes like it tastes like what's it called, girls? Tastes like shave ice. Tastes like shave ice in Hawaii, or shave ice that we get from those Kodo trucks. Okay. So remember, that's how mommy used to teach you guys to self-regulate and like use the tools that we have available to us to calm ourselves down so that then we can focus and really like look at what we need to do. And last year, mommy was not in a place to do that. Despite the fact that that's what I teach you guys and my students, I wasn't, but I am now. And this thing that I have to do in my public records, I've got it taped. And then once I get the information, it'll go back in here in my big binder. And it's going to go on Mondays, but I might have to change that to Tuesday if I don't get it all done. So it goes here. And then that says certified mail. I should have already actually done that. But let's just go ahead and throw this over here. This is CPS-PR. Good. And then over here, mommy has my tort lawsuit, which is what I'm going to talk to the adults about. And I actually have that done. So I can cross that off my list. But thank you, baby girls, for coming. You guys can jump off. I don't know if you're actually watching this now or whenever, but it makes me really, really happy to think that I'm talking to you guys. So, kiddos, you guys go. Now I'm going to talk to the adults. All right, parents, welcome to hell. Just kidding. Welcome to the fight room. So, like I said, I'm going live every single night at 7 p.m. until I get my kids back. And I was talking to a military father. He's a retired colonel. And he was telling me that he had sent 800 cards to himself for his kids over the period of, I think, 600 days, which means that like some days he sent 2. And, there's like multiple kids. So all the kids got a different card. And I just thought, wow, like that's such a beautiful way to show your kids down the line that you were thinking of them the whole time and not, just out and about. And that's been something that's been really difficult for me in moving on, is that it's so hard to move on when your kids are trapped in this, because moving on almost feels like a betrayal of, the life you used to have. And so some of the things that I've been doing lately since the doxing, I talked about the other day, Monterey Rape Crisis Center. I've gotten into some amazing therapy with them. They've got like weekly groups. And then the California Victims Compensation Board has something called has trauma recovery centers. And it took me reaching out to about a dozen of them, and my doctors reaching out, and then the victims victims advocate through the LA, what do you call that? DA's office reaching out. And so that was really big news. And that helped me kind of stabilize and ground. And so I prioritized the healing aspect. And then I've been going through all of my records and getting that organized. I put everything in storage. So like not having to clean a house, not having to make dinner, like not having to focus on anything but the case, and connecting with other parents has been really, really, I don't know what I want to say, helpful for me. And today what we're going to do is just like a little check-in of the progress that I've made since getting doxxed in December. When I thought December 19th, I'd be able to like go to court and be like, hey, here's what's going on. It wasn't the plan that God had for me or us in family court. And so what we're doing now is just day by day, figuring out what the next best step is. So because my family law cases got reset until April, I've been dealing with these criminal charges that my ex-husband levied against me. And in order to fight them, first I had to know what I was being accused of. And then it took months to get the initial discovery. I think like 2 months to get the initial discovery, which was wild, to be accused of a crime and not to know what your crime is. So you're like, how can I plead guilty or not if I don't know if I did what you're saying I did? And so I learned like the criminal side of how family law victims get criminalized and for profit. And the system is designed exactly as it's intended to, which, pro tip, if you get charged criminally, fight your case on your own, but use your public defender, because the public defender is going to have to represent you. And at a certain point, they are able to negotiate directly with the DA, but always do your own research, always do your own case study. So like I prepare my case. I didn't expect the DA to defend my case, because there's literally so much and they have such a big caseload that I wanted to be like, if anything happens, because public defenders also switch out, and one might know your case really, really well and then leave. You want to also know your case. And this is something that if I could go back to when I used to teach social studies and we would teach pecuniary liability, I would do these like juvenile delinquency classes for my students. So we talk about like the difference between kids getting tried in like a juvenile court versus a adult court and what the age is and all that. And it was, because I was a social studies teacher, it was a civics project for us. And if I could go back and impart anything on those students, it is like as soon as anything happens, know your rights, like know the Constitution inside and out. For example, in family law, you can get banned, you can get a restraining order and lose your right to bear arms, which is actually against the Constitution, especially if you haven't been found guilty of a violent crime. So there's an appeal there. And I mean, that's just like the top line, but I could go on and on with that. And where I was going with this is I have spent the last 2 months preparing my criminal case, which I'm very prepared for now. And it's all been sent over to the DA. And the charges will likely be dismissed. And if not, then we will go to trial where I will get to like present all the witnesses and the evidence that I didn't originally get to present. And or I could also enter diversion. Like there's a lot there. But the good part is my ex-husband's attorney put these briefs in where she's literally saying like, hey, until this woman's like criminal trial is over and she's convicted, we shouldn't divide assets, which is like literally why we have laws against attaching finances in civil court to criminal charges, because abusers are well known to use this tactic. And my ex-husband, God bless him, is quite literally a textbook abuser. My doctors have been saying that since 2020. And I finally started believing them in 2023, which was super dangerous for me. And that was something that we talked about in my in our therapy group, about how you go from being safe in the knowing that as long as you protect your abuser, they won't hurt you as badly. But then the more people start to become aware of their abuse, the more danger you're actually in. And yeah, that was really hard to hear other women say today, but also very validating. So with that, I've been focusing on getting into trauma recovery and getting the groundwork laid for getting the criminal case dismissed. And if not dismissed, then there's 2 types of diversion that I can go into. And I made those plans with my public defender, and I got him all the information that he needs. And I have been keeping a record of everything so that, God forbid, heaven forbid, he moves out of the office or anything like that, I have all the information and I can fight my case. And that's the best thing that family law has ever taught me, is we don't necessarily need lawyers if we can be calm and grounded and fight our case from a place of strength. And this week, I have heard several parents have reached out and they've had some wins. So like one mom who had, almost $100,000 of child support imputed on her over several years, despite being abused by the person she was ordered to pay child support to. Sound familiar to anybody? This isn't my case, but she was approved for SSDI, and they backdated it. And so it actually shows that DCSS, Department of Child and Social Services, imputed income on a disabled individual. And so they have to credit her all of that. And I don't know exactly how that works with like back taxes and all that, or credit scores, but it really does show me how the Title 4D and E money for CPS and then in child support court really plays a huge role in why these agencies are so spun up on collecting debt, basically, or child support debt. So those are the 2 big things that I focused on this month: healing, and then getting that criminal case set, and then reviewing all my documents and realizing that I have a handful of orders that, like tonight, that's going to be another thing I do. Like I'm going to tape them up, because those are going to be like if I can get those documents turned over. Oh, thank you. Turned over or like changed, it'll tip my case in the other direction. And then the last thing I've been doing is my tort claims. So I have a tort claim against the federal government, and I have a tort claim against Monterey County Court because of the clerk. So I showed you guys these last night. It's the documents of how they blah blah blah. My mascara didn't make it. No, all right. So in California, you send it to the Judicial Council of California, Attention Administrative Office of the Courts, Secretariat for Claims. So in York County, in your state, I made the mistake of sending it to the county, which was not a total waste of time because like I said yesterday, now I know who the county's insurance carrier is. So every institution, every public institution has a third-party claims administrator. And so for the county of Monterey, it's this company called Intercare. And I got the claim number and they were like, oh, hey, whoopsie, the claim that you presented to us on the 10th of December 2025 was rejected on the 23rd of December because we're the wrong entity. So then I talked to them and I was like, well, what entity are you guys? Who do you represent? And he's like, well, they didn't want to tell me. So then I started doing my own research and I'm like, oh, so like CPS and, Monterey Department, Basically what you can do is you can go on a county website and whatever places are listed there, like for example, let me pull it up, Monterey County, Monterey County. Let's just look it up. There we go. Okay, let's. So this is how you can figure out where you want to send your tort claims, because in order to sue the federal government or the state government, what you have to do is give them you have to give them notice basically. And sometimes it's 6 months notice. Sometimes it's 45 days notice. And then they can either say okay, you know what, our bad, we will reimburse you. So let's say you're in Alaska in Matsu Borough, which is a county, but it's a borough, that's what we call them. And you get hit by a snowplow driver who is a county worker, right? Okay, so that clearly is them. And then you can show all your damages and then they'll probably likely just settle because it's like an at-fault situation. And you can show it right away. And then if they decide not to, as long as they admit that they're the correct agency to sue, you either get 45 days. And if they don't respond to you, then you can just proceed with the lawsuit because you can say hey, here is the certified mail for this document that I sent on this date at this time. So I have my certified mail in the other binder and I kept it from the post office. And then when I looked at what they had, I'm like, yeah, they received it on the same day that I mailed it. So I mailed on the 10th, they received it on 13th. Cool. Okay. Awesome. So it's showing me that the process I am doing the process correct. I got the entity wrong. That's okay. I'm going to need that entity for when I'm looking through Monterey County. And if there's any, look here, any of these departments, oh, you don't say. Child Support Services, Civil Rights Office, Clerk of the Board, and then there should be one with District Attorney, Elections, Human Resources, Housing and Community Development, Health. All of these fall under social services that, my family was either denied or just went terribly wrong with. And then visitors, nope, visitors, government, click that, departments. Okay. So if you look at the departments, it'll give you who the head is, how to contact them. And now, because I already know who their claims agent is, when I submit the new claim to them, I can CC whoever, their head person is, and then I can send it straight to their agency just to put everybody on notice. And then when you're filing your lawsuits, you've got everybody there. Okay, so that's for the county. And let me just read you guys what I had to do. Where is it? I might need to print another one. Did I print it? Ah, it's on the printer. Stay. Okay, so if you have a claim against the government, specifically the judicial branch, you're going to look up the government claim form for the judicial branch, and then it's obviously different in every state. So the one that we have in California is called the 910.4. It's just like a standard form. And it's going to ask you the name of the claimant, your, just information generally. And then it will have a stamp up at the top. So that's where they will file it as like received. And ideally, they will send it back to you with like the stamp on it. And then it says, describe the indebtedness, obligation, injury, damage, or loss incurred as a result of this incident. So what I put is the court clerk for the Superior Court of Monterey County publicly filed and made accessible confidential medical, sexual assault, psychotherapy records, and other documents, including a confidential SH001 safe at home filing and attached Monterey County Rape Crisis Center psychotherapy notes, which were legally required to be filed under seal. The public disclosure included sexual assault counseling records, psychotherapy session notes, PTSD diagnosis and treatment information, trauma narratives, identifying information protected under safe at home law. This disclosure caused severe emotional distress and re-traumatization, fear for personal safety due to exposure of protected identity, exacerbation of PTSD symptoms, loss of privacy and dignity, ongoing psychological harm, need for additional medical and therapeutic care. The court later admitted the filing was improper and ordered the document stricken and deleted. Then it says, state the circumstances that gave rise to this claim. On October 14, 2025, claimant filed a confidential information form under Civil Code of Procedure 367.3 SH001, along with supporting psychotherapy documentation. These records were submitted for sealed in-camera judicial review only, as clearly indicated on the form and required by statute and California Rules of Court. Despite these mandatory protections, the court clerk inadvertently filed the SH001 and attached psychotherapy notes, making them accessible through the court's record system. On November 14, 2025, the court issued an out-of-court entry admitting that the clerk had inadvertently filed, their words, the confidential form and psychotherapy notes and ordered the material stricken and deleted. The court's admission confirms the records were confidential. They were required to be sealed, and the clerk failed to follow mandatory procedures. Therefore, the disclosure was unauthorized. The Superior Court and its clerks are responsible for the negligent handling of protected medical and sexual assault survivor records. This was really hard for me to write because I had done another one for Monterey County, and when that one, it didn't get rejected, I just had sent it to the wrong claimant. A lawyer had helped me write it, and so I knew what to put, but for some reason, this one was so much harder for me. So I actually took this form, I put it in ChatGPT. I took the other form that I had done, I put that in ChatGPT, and I said, hey, I'm having I am really coming up against difficulty in completing this, for my own internal, I don't know what it was. It took me 4 days to get this done when it should have been, I normally boom, getting it done, but that's trauma, right? And it's reliving it. And it was a Herculean effort the first time to get this stuff filed, but that's neither here nor there. And then I put in the documents from the actual court clerk themselves, and they gave me kind of the bullets to cite, and that made it easier because then I was just copying, pasting, and editing, going oh no, that's okay. So then it's going to ask you the amount of damages. So if your claim is up to $10,000, you put the exact damages. And then if your claim is more than $10,000, you need to indicate whether your claim would be a limited civil case or an unlimited civil case. So for me, after consulting with several lawyers on this, they said to claim an unlimited civil amount, which is more than $25,000, because the damages can't be known in total yet, because a public doxing has effects into the future. So I don't know how long I'll be out of the classroom teaching, but if I'm out of the classroom for several years because of this, that's however many years of a public school teacher salary that I would be denied, right? I had to move. I had like what do you even call it? I didn't even get to when I like other people moved me out of my house. Like I didn't even take the wallpaper down, the holes in the wall, none of it. So I had to pay all of that. So and then they say, so state how the amount of your claim was computed, including copies of supporting documentation such as billing statements, invoices, receipts, and estimates. Medical care, it's a whole other thing. So emotional distress, PTSD exacerbation, medical costs, therapy, safety planning to be determined. Damages include emotional distress and psychological trauma, medical and therapy expenses, safety and privacy mitigation costs, future medical and mental health treatment, loss of privacy and constitutional injury, and then documentation will be provided during litigation. So this is me basically saying, like, I'm suing you guys for an undisclosed amount. If I wanted to do just like a quick claim and be like, these are my exact damages right now, I could have made the claim of $10,000 and then shown, because I've got way over $10,000 in damages, attached the bills and then sent that. And they might have responded with like a check right away. But the lawyer said it's very unlikely, and this is a precedent case, and what you want to do is go for the highest amount possible to recoup everybody who was injured during that exposure. And once you go into active litigation with these government entities, they do discovery. And when they're looking at what was actually published, they'll find every single person's name that was published as part of those records. And then you can go in and claim damages on their behalf. So like my kids or, whoever else, a friend, whatever. And this is something that I'm really, 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 really praying anybody in the Epstein list is paying attention to, because we have seen that the government is not willing to tell us who did what, and we have to figure it out. But if you're one of those survivors, you know exactly who did what to you. So if you see, like they've got some driver's licenses published, they've got pictures of people published, like if you just know that you're on the list, like you know that you were trafficked by these people, you likely know who your perpetrators were. And so what you can actually do is file a claim against the federal government or against your state government, against anybody who did not help you, right? You reported and they didn't do what they were supposed to. So look into, they're called tort lawsuits, T-O-R-T, and they're like big lawsuits involving multiple entities. And I'm not going to pretend to know anything about anything, but I definitely feel like if you're an Epstein survivor or if you're on those lists and anybody who hurt you works for the federal government or a state government, this is how you can go after them for damages. And additionally, if they have documents redacted, you can file a 2He request and get those documents unredacted. But again, it's a lot like me when I'm like going through my Army documents. Like I know who all these redactions are for the most part. What I'm trying to get or what I was really concerned about getting unredacted was like testimony or statements or anything like that, because it's like giant, it's like the Epstein picture, just giant blackouts. And you're like, okay, well, so what is this? So, and then you're going to list the names and addresses and telephone numbers to all witnesses to the incident. In this case, I just did, the court of the clerk, unknown additional clerk staff responsible for processing and posting, supervisory personnel responsible for training and safeguards, Judge Heidi K. Wilden, Judge Thomas W. Willis, Judge Vanessa Vallarta, Commissioner Maria Mendoza, Katie Grant, Nancy Cornejo. And then I named a couple other court clerks. And what I guess I could have also put is anybody who saw me during this time for the fallout. Provide any additional information that might be helpful in considering this claim. This claim involves violation of Code of Civil Procedure, safe at home confidentiality. It's 367.3. California Rules of Court 2.550-2.551, sealed records. Confidentiality of Medical Information Act, Civil Code 56.10. California Constitutional Article 1, right to privacy. federal constitutional privacy rights, 42 USC 1983. That's like a big one that people are filing with federal government. And then supporting court documentation admitting the improper filing is attached. So that's this. And then if you have a lawyer, you would have them sign it. Like if you have a representative, but because I am the claimant, I'm going to sign it and then date it. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is make sure that it is sent via certified mail. So I also made a copy of these for my own records, and I've got it in my county records, documents to be able to go back and say like, hey, these are the documents. This is what led to this. Because what I'm going to show is the court never would have experienced this egregious error, and I wouldn't have suffered this egregious error had the county not trusted the military to do their job for them, basically. Because everybody's always looking for a scapegoat. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, what I really want is the court to retrain its employees. Like for me, that's the most important thing. Like people are like, are you doing this for money? Why are you doing it? Honestly, I'm doing this and I'm speaking as loudly as I possibly can about it so that every county clerk in the state of California gets retrained and we get as much attention on this as possible so that no one ever has to go through it again. So here are my two. I'm sending one to the local claim, which is in Salinas for Monterey County Court. And then I'm sending one to the secretariat at the main administrative office, and that's in San Francisco. So, and I'm going to send those both certified mail tomorrow. And again, if you're in family court, hell, I'm sure you have like your own system of how you're doing what you need to do. But for me, it wasn't until I got this wall together that I'm finally like making progress every day and not feeling like I'm drowning. And over the summer, I did a Y wall for my finances. And it took me months, and I'm still going through my coerced debt and my coerced debt and fee dispute resolution process. But once I'm a little bit farther in those, and it's almost like a year now, I will show you guys all that. I'll also show you all of the judicial complaint like reports that I made and all of the California bar complaints that I made. And it's like at the end of the day, now that we're seeing how corrupt our judicial system is, it's like, is it any wonder why I never gained any traction? No, but is it upsetting nonetheless? Yeah, it really is. But you just stay the course, and at the very least, I will have documented this for you all so that God forbid anything like this ever happens to anybody. You can go back and look and be like, well, these are the pitfalls that this woman went through. And I know Meg, Stand With Meg over on Facebook, does a lot of this. But I'm not that put together to do like the fancy stuff. So I'm just going to like show you the actual hard, like what I'm doing. Okay. So Monday, I've got two. Mail that. Actually, that's Tuesday. So I'm going to mail those, certified mail. And then last but not least is my Form 95. So those were against the state of California. This is against the federal government. And this is the one that I've been saying is like kind of the most important, because if it weren't for the federal government, like screwing my family over so badly, none of this would have happened. So the form is Standard Form 95. Look it up. And it is what you use when you are making a claim to the government. So this one's going to the U.S. Army Claims Service at Fort Meade. And I'm actually going to probably do 2 copies of this to make sure that it goes to the right place, because if you just send it to one and it's the wrong place, you're kind of screwed because you're like, oh, and you got to wait for it to come back. And type of employment. So I don't think I need to do that because I am not. It's not like a. It's not a. It's not a. We'll do military because it's like for military members. Okay. Date of birth, marital status, date and day of accident, and then time. So on or about December 21st, 2023, federal employees of the Department of the Army at the Presidio of Monterey, including personnel from the Criminal Investigation Division, CID, the Presidio of Monterey Police Department, the Family Advocacy Program, and the Army Housing Office, engaged in retaliatory, defamatory, and negligent actions against me. And then I did see attached. There was no property damage, but there was personal injury. So state the nature and extent of each injury and cause of death, which forms the basis of the claim. If other than claimant, state the name of the injured person or decedent. Emotional distress, reputational harm, unlawful exclusion from federal property, denial of trauma-related services, and interference with due process and legal standing in concurrent civil and criminal proceedings. So basically what happened was my ex-husband used a falsified Presidio of Monterey police report, so a military institution, to invoke protections under the Monterey County DA's office to get a emergency protective order, which before that expired after 7 days, he then went to the Family Advocacy Program and enlisted the help of Jillian Santaez, who's the devil I showed you guys yesterday, who has retired by the grace of God. And if you were one of the employees she retaliated against, hit me up. You guys can sue her. Anyways, these women make my blood boil. Because she literally intimidated me and other military spouses in court. That takes a special type of sicko to do that. But also my ex-husband's like a Ted Bundy. So maybe she genuinely thought he was innocent. At this point, I'm like, you need to look at these records. She needs to be shamed in our community that she so egregiously mishandled this. And I know that there's others in Monterey who she has mishandled their cases because they've actually reached out to me and they're like, oh, I had Jillian. She's the devil. She's the worst. She doesn't believe women. She claims to be a, supporter of domestic violence and sexual assault recovery, but she's anything but. So anyways, where I was going with that is my ex-husband used the Presidio of Monterey to obtain a false police report, got an emergency protective order through the Monterey County DA's office, turned that emergency protective order of 7 days into a temporary restraining order while lying to my family and friends, saying the police just showed up and that the DA was prosecuting and he had nothing to do with it, which the public records request and not FOIA disclosures, those are public records requests that I did to the Monterey County DA show the exact opposite. He literally plotted with them, which is why the Monterey County DA is looking at the new charges that he's brought as an even farther down the line retaliation tactic of his. And they're like, hold on a second, we've already adjudicated this. And so now they're actually going to look at him for frivolous filing and then hopefully work with the investigators at the state bar to look into Brianna Cornwall because she's under investigation as well. So because he's an abuser. Abusers are going to abuse, but his attorney knows better and should be doing better, and she's not. So that's kind of on her. And it's on the DA's office to recognize that they got played. And now they're scared because they're like, oh my gosh, we've got this person who is not really high profile, but in Monterey County, I'm, making a lot of noise to the point where other people in Monterey County are reaching out to me to court watch, and I am. And we literally I had a woman today who last Tuesday said, she goes, I don't know what happened, and I didn't court watch for her. I heard about it later. She goes, I don't know what happened, but my judge's tone completely changed. She told me I had to come in person. I couldn't be remote, et cetera, et cetera. And then today she's like, I didn't go because I didn't go for my next one in person because I was so scared of my abuser. And she's like, he's sitting there in like a jumpsuit. Like, why do I have to be there in person? Can't I just testify? All the things, all the trauma responses. And she goes, but out of nowhere, the judge just said, like, I could come remote from now on. And I was like, oh, it's working. Our advocacy is working. That means that the court watching we are doing in Monterey County is working. And maybe the word's getting around that she's being recalled, that there are almost 300 people in the county of Monterey who are signing a petition saying that this judge is violating the Americans with Disabilities Act and not respecting survivors of domestic violence or sexual assault, and just like fundamentally acting out of alignment with the 14th Amendment, like rights to due process and ADA laws, et cetera, et cetera. Because remember, guys, federal law supersedes state and local policies, procedures, and plans. So someone goes like, well, it's our policy that we don't do this. Like, fuck your policy, bitch. You ever read the Constitution? It's called an amendment. It's called a right. It's called, you don't get to say, well, our policies are. It's like, no, your policy is not violating my title to ADA like rights. Your policy doesn't get to supersede the VAWA Act, the Violence Against Women and Children Act. Like, nah. And again, that is why you have to become your best advocate. And I genuinely believe that's why God has put me through this, because I am a teacher, and naturally, like, this is my healing, because I can't be in a classroom right now. I have a service animal. My sleep is disturbed. My eating is off. Like, I'm not I couldn't make it through a full teaching day if I tried. I did for the first year of my divorce. I worked 3 jobs. It literally nearly killed me. I lost like 100 pounds, all my hair. I just was ragged and like couldn't think and couldn't process. And then I couldn't fight my case. And now the idea of like going back and teaching a full day is like, oh, I wish I could. I walk near school and I always see like the pencils and the kids, and I'm like, I miss it, but I'm not able to do it right now. So for right now, me teaching anybody who's watching this, that is what I'm supposed to be doing. So back to our Form 95. State the nature and extent of each injury. Okay. Which forms the basis of the claim. Emotional distress, reputational harm, unlawful exclusion from federal property. That's a big one. Because I even have my special victims counsel who like advocated and was like, I don't understand why you're still being denied. This is wild. Denial of trauma-related services and interference with due process and legal standing in concurrent civil and criminal proceedings. Then you put like the amount of the claim, and then witnesses, see attached. Do you carry auto insurance or accident insurance? I don't know. They like want to know who your insurance carrier is. Sign it. Okay. And then this is what I have listed as like my witnesses. So the federal agency, this claim is brought against the Department of Defense with specific focus on the U.S. Army Garrison Presidio of Monterey, including its subordinate units such as the Criminal Investigation Division, Family Advocacy Program, Army Housing Office, and the Presidio of Monterey Police Department. I listed them all because there is a 6-month window from the time that this is submitted to the government to when they can be like, nah, like you can't sue us, or like, yeah, you can sue us. And I listed all of them so that I don't have to keep like going back and then setting the clock 6 months, because they all fall under the Department of Defense. And then within the Department of Defense, they all fall under the Department of the Army. And so, it's like, it is what it is. I just threw it all at the wall. And again, this was what I consulted with a civil rights lawyer about. So based on case details, all federal agencies, sub-agencies, and affiliated offices involved in the actions that give rise to this Federal Tort Claims Act, FTCA filing. Primary federal agencies involved. Sorry. Department of Defense, DOD, parent agency overseeing all military departments. 2, Department of the Army, sub-agency of DOD responsible for installations, CID, and Army personnel. U.S. Army installation level entities at the Presidio of Monterey. 3, U.S. Army Garrison Presidio of Monterey, central authority for all installation services and oversight. 4, Presidio of Monterey Police Department, POM PD. Army Civilian Police under Garrison Command involved in investigation and enforcement of actions. So when we get down to the nitty gritty of the litigation, that is where all of this comes into play and why I am so grateful that my ex-husband tried to have me criminally charged, because when you are the criminal defendant, you are entitled to a 2E unredaction. So I don't know how it would have worked if I hadn't if he hadn't accused me as the victim. I don't know if I would have gotten all the things unredacted, but as the accused party, because I have to be allowed to present my defense and you get to, face your accuser and all that, I got to have the unredacted version. And so that forms the basis of this lawsuit. That would be my biggest recommendation for anybody. And again, I'm an Army historian, so a lot of what I do is based on knowing that you might lose a battle, you might lose 10 battles, but if you're fighting a war and it is a righteous war, it is a righteous cause, and you are not the only one that benefits from it, then one, the Lord, and two, all the commanding generals in heaven will help you. And I have relied on Eisenhower so many times. And a little trick that I would throw your way is read The Art of War, 1. 2, put into ChatGPT these are 2 hacks that I've been doing lately. 1, say this is what I am tackling. Give me a strategy based on a successful war campaign that has been waged in the past. That is literally how I survived this, because I was getting away from an active duty military intelligence officer who has always told me, Autumn, you're playing checkers and we're playing 3D chess. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but it obviously sounds more elevated than I know what checkers is, because I play that outside of Cracker Barrel with the kids. But 1, I don't know how to play chess. 2, 3D anything sounds high level, and 4D is I don't understand. I don't get the concept. So take it for what you will, but that's who I was up against. And at a certain point, I realized that I was going to have to suffer a lot of losses, but as long as I could stay alive and stay in the fight, it's kind of like in World War I when they were in the foxholes and you just get in the trenches. They call it trench warfare. So I'm a World War I expert. I created a curriculum for the United States Army Center of Military History on World War I, celebrating the centennial back in 2019. And I genuinely feel like I am in the trenches of World War I. And I've got trench foot because my feet are soaking and dirty, and they've been in my boots for months. And I have shell shock because everybody next to me is getting blown up. And we have to cross a field just to survive after the battle is done, but you don't know where the booby traps are. And even though there's 10 of us that survived, we still have to make it across this field. And the chances are by the time we get across the field, there's only gonna be 4 of us. And so that is how this battle has been for me. But knowing history, that a lot of those World War I soldiers came back, and then what happened with World War II and World War III. I'm now getting into a history lesson that you guys are all going to be bored with, but type it into ChatGPT, talk out your issue, be like, this is what happened. This is my county. This is my state. This is the federal players that are involved. And this is the evidence that I have. What evidence do I need to bring a federal lawsuit? And again, if you're one of the Epstein victims, this is an avenue you should be pursuing. And I know there's going to be a bunch of lawyers, a bunch of bottom feeders who are going to start doing these lawsuits. Why? Because these are billionaires with a B. And they have the money to pay these people out. They have the money to say, oh, sorry, they're Hollywood producers. The executive producer of Bones just got, dinged. And they're going to be more and more and more. And if you are one of their victims, or you are the survivor of one of the victims, you can claim damages. And I would strongly suggest that you find your name in the files, file a local police report, and then go to whatever your state institution is, like the California Victims Compensation Board, and apply for compensation. Because what those government entities can then do is force the perpetrators to pay restitution. So in some cases, they don't go after restitution if there's not a criminal conviction. But in other cases, they will go after a civil restitution case. And it really just depends on who's trying to save face or who's really protecting people. So back to that. That's just like my little side tangent is don't try to sue the government before you have like all of your ammunition. And my dad always says it best, Autumn, keep your powder dry, meaning like don't shoot before you're ready to like take aim. And like I'm ready to take aim now because I've been documenting this for over 2 years. And for everything that's redacted that cannot be unredacted, I have my own documents. And I think I said this on season 1 of the Trebuchet podcast. I said, if you enter into the family advocacy program or into any type of government agency, anything like that, write down the person's name, their badge number, ask how much training they have. Be as respectful and polite as you can, especially if you're in trauma, which I know is not easy. You can ask for an advocate to be with you and like get as much information as you can and just like keep a note because down the line, if your case or a situation doesn't go the way that it's supposed to, you can then go back and like cross-reference. And for me, that has been the biggest, like the most healing thing because like there's this one detective at the Presidio of Monterey. Her name is Lieutenant Christina Gunter, and she's just a monster. And like she really doubled and tripled down on her monstrosities. And like it was like she was like, listen to women, nah, like like do trauma informed active listening, pass, like unsubscribe. Like she just was like at every turn, just like really was like, oh, this is just a bitter wife trying to get whatever. And it's like, wow. If it was really only that simple, it would have been, I wish if it was truly just that, I would have given up a long time ago. And also if that's all it was, don't you guys think that like, I mean, I'm not like a bag of rocks. I understand I'm not like a knockout, but I'm not horrific looking. And even though my personality could probably use some rehabilitation and like, some like polishing, don't you think if this was about money for me, I could have like snagged somebody when I was working at Pebble Beach or somebody while I was like in LA? Like, guys, it's not about money for me. It's about my kids and it's about safety and breaking generational cycles, not about bleeding an army guy dry for his pension that I helped him earn after 17 years. Like make it make sense and like just do your job or like do what you were trained to do. So for me, that is why I'm doing this. If nothing else, to make these institutions follow their own rules. And if I can educate an army of citizens to do the same thing, even better. That is why I am a teacher. You don't go into teaching for the money or the fame. I want a cup like that. One of the teachers I used to substitute for had a cup and it said, I teach for the money and fame, which is hilarious. Okay. Central Authority for all installation services and oversight. Okay. Presidio Monterey Police Department, Army Civilian Police under Garrison Command involved in investigation and enforcement actions. 5, Army Criminal Investigation Division, CID, federal law enforcement agency that created investigative reports and issued flags. 6, the Family Advocacy Program, FAP, at the Presidio Monterey, Army program responsible for domestic abuse response and official victim determinations. 7, Army Community Service / Soldier and Family Readiness Center, oversaw FAP and Victims Advocate Services. 8, Army Housing Office, Presidio of Monterey, involved in service restrictions, retaliation, and housing access interference. Other Army or DOD installations involved. 9, Fort Huachuca Soldier and Family Readiness Center, location a victim advocate under Magellan federal contract. Federal agencies involved in FOIA and administrative review. The U.S. Army Records Management and Declassification Agency, RMDA, responded to multiple FOIA requests and referrals. Department of the Army, Office of General Counsel, issued denials and exemptions in my FOIA appeal. Department of the Army, Office of Inspector General, DAIG, refused to confirm or deny the existence of records related to complaints, which I then just like went around them and got it anyways. Sorry. Like, when you're a nerd and like all you can do is be like, I out nerded you. At least I'm not angry anymore. I feel like I'm healing. Okay, basis for claim, Section 8. On or about December 21st, 2023, federal employees, I think I've already, oh no, I haven't read you guys this, did I? Sure didn't. Ooh, ready? On or about December 21st, 2023, federal employees of the Department of Army at the Presidio of Monterey, including personnel from the Criminal Investigation Division, CID, the Presidio of Monterey Police Department, the Family Advocacy Program, and the Army Housing Office engaged in retaliatory, defamatory, and negligent actions against me. On November 14th, 2024, the Army Family Advocacy Program Incident Determination Committee officially designated me as the family member victim in a partner sexual abuse case, incident number Despite this, I'll just say it, 20240022. Despite this determination, after a nearly 52-week investigation, Army officials issued a bar to post, interfered with my access to support services, and allowed my confidential status to be undermined by other agencies and commands. The CID created and distributed misleading reports, and the FAP and Housing Office failed to uphold protective duties or follow established Army procedures. Multiple FOIA responses show key records were redacted or withheld under privacy exemptions, despite their relevance to active criminal and civil matters in which I am a party. These actions obstructed my ability to defend myself in court and to access institutional protections, resulting in harm to my legal rights, mental health, and reputation. And then I said witnesses for Section 11. Military and Installation Command, Colonel Samuel Klein, Garrison Commander, U.S. Army Garrison Presidio of Monterey. Colonel Daniel Artino, former Garrison Commander, U.S. Army Garrison Presidio of Monterey. Colonel James Kievit, Commander, Defense Language Institute, Foreign Language Center, Presidio of Monterey. Klein and Kievit were both Penn State alumni grads from the ROTC program, which my ex-husband was as well, which is like awkward. Because it shows like, oh, so you're just like covering down for your buddies. And like, I have all of the emails between the two of us, like me and Colonel Klein and Kievit. But when I FOIA'd them from the Army, they redacted them. And I'm like, okay, so like, did you guys forget that I actually like have those? So that's weird, but whatever. It still shows the time and the dates are all same, right? So they're like, on this date, this happened. And I'm like, well, you guys want to unredact it and look at what happened? Because I've got my version and my version looks real bad for you. So go ahead and unredact yours and see if yours looks good for you. It doesn't. Anyways, law enforcement investigations. Detective Roberto Cruz, badge number 71, Presidio of Monterey Police Department. Lieutenant Christina Gunter, GS9, Supervisory Investigator, Presidio of Monterey Police Department. Additional officers and CID agents named in, and then I like put all the report numbers. Family Advocacy and Victim Services, Emily McCormick, Case Manager, Family Advocacy Program. Vanessa Colhart, Domestic Abuse Victim Advocate, Fort Huachuca Soldier and Family Readiness Center. Army Housing and Public Services, Oscar Ordonez, Staff, Army Community Housing Office. Teresa Watkins, Staff, Army Community Housing Office. And then I didn't put her on here because she's not a witness, but Jillian Santaez is going to be one of the defendants. So I only put the people who I'm calling to be like, you at least tried to do the right thing. There's another lady, Colleen. What was her last name? Colleen in my SVC, whatever. Anyways, those are just kind of like the top level ones. I can add more later. I just wanted to get some initial on there and not overwhelm them. And then what I'm including in this is the official bar to post. So on December 21st, 2023, my ex-husband used the false emergency protective order that he got, turned it into a temporary restraining order, and then got that turned into a criminal protective order, and then took that criminal protective order to his buddy, Samuel Klein, who was the garrison commander at the time, to get me barred from post, which is like super, super, super uncalled for and unconstitutional and totally out of alignment. Like the number of bars to post that they have is so limited, but they did this because I had been blowing the whistle about the toxic, like the mold and the toxic housing. So they didn't do it because of the domestic violence. They just used that kind of like as the cover. But they said, Mrs. Seibel, I should read it because let me read it as Colonel Klein or just like regular. I do this for my kids when I want to read them like with an accent. Okay, I'll do it like a douchebag because Colonel Klein's a douchebag. Yeah, I said it, Sam. Go fuck yourself. I know it doesn't make me like it does not give me points in heaven for like dunking on these lieutenant colonels or these colonels, but like you're an asshole, Klein. And you know what? Just I didn't do this yesterday, but I'm going to today. Let's look him up just so you can see Colonel Samuel Klein Monterey. What I'd like to do there, that's Klein. What a douche. He was in my house in Monterey and like he goes, "Oh, your son's name is Eisenhower, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Did you know Eisenhower's wife's name?" And I was like, "Mamie." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, a lot of people don't know that." I was like, he's like, "You're just such a douche." And he's like, "Does this mold really keep you up all night?" I was like, yeah, worrying about my son is sick all night. So yeah, literally it does keep me up all night. And also military families are getting sick and you don't seem to care. So yeah, it does keep me up all night. This is Sam Klein. Giant douche. Can you guys imagine what it must feel like to have been a military wife for 17 years? And someday I will show you my ex-husband's behavior journal that he kept on me. That literally says like Autumn was well behaved, which is wild because that's like what you say about a dog or a child. That he submitted as evidence in our case, so it's not like it was confidential. Like not like I'm publishing his records. Like he sent it to my family, friends. It was all over, being like, "Look how crazy Autumn is," and everybody's like, "Actually, dude, this is kind of weird. Like you said she was like well behaved, and like we're tracking her period. Like I don't know about this." Anyways, can you imagine how good it feels for me to be able to dunk on these guys? Like, fully, they could kill me, like, at any time. This dude might just off me. But oh, that's his wife. His wife is former military as well. Figure out who she is. Hold on. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so he was married to, oh, that's right, retired Navy Lieutenant Commander Heather Klein. They didn't have kids, so they really just didn't understand why being such a douchebag and not caring about families at the Presidio was such a big deal. But can you imagine how good it feels for me as a military spouse of this many years to be like, "Hey, Sam Klein, you're a douchebag." And I've got all the text messages, all the documents, all the letters to show what you did. And even though calling you a douchebag is not a criminal thing, it doesn't make me look good. It sure feels good. And in the court of public opinion, you are the bad guy. And it's just a bad look for you. Okay. Mrs. Seibel, as Garrison Commander, Presidio of Monterey, California, you are hereby notified that effective 21 December 2023, you are barred from the Presidio of Monterey Palm Installation Complex. Mind you, when I got this, I nearly died. 2 years later, I can laugh at it. The Palm Installation Complex consists of the Presidio of Monterey, the Ord Military Community, and the La Mesa Housing Village. I'm taking this action based on your violations of California Penal Code CPC 243E1 and 273A, domestic violence and child endangerment. You fucking kidding me, Klein? I was the one reporting child endangerment to you for months. Literally called you crying from the hotel on base after my ex had grabbed my arm, pushed me to the back of the car, and demanded to know who I was talking to and who he had to apologize to for my bad behavior. Asking you for help, motherfucker. Yeah. Don't think that I don't have those screenshots. Don't think that I don't have those texts. Don't think that I don't have those call logs, because I do. And you know who else has them? The military spouses whose houses were also infected with mold, who I was calling and telling at the exact same time, like, this is what's happening in real time. They're saying, call Klein, call Klein. So like you covered your own ass, you CYA'd. But now on the flip, when I get out my texts and I read my text messages from Colonel Klein, which let's pull them up. I love that iPhone has the ability just to like, boom, pull it up. And like, granted, okay, I could have that number saved as anything, but let's just scroll back. July 6th, 2023. Autumn, I will be down there in a few minutes. That's when I called him for help. And then in November, I texted him, happy belated Halloween, Colonel Klein. Our family very much enjoyed the safety and protection Palm PD provided the children. This is 21 days before my arrest, 19 days. Protection Palm PD provided the children of our community and reminded us why we chose to live in on-base housing. Thank you for your action on the matter. Unfortunately, the tricks and treats have not departed for the season, and our children woke up to a live rat that chewed off its own leg trying to escape a glue board in our living room. Our son is now at the DOD clinic being seen for building-induced illness. Hazardous living conditions caused by the Michaels organization inaction continues to haunt La Mesa residents. Here's hoping for a healthy Thanksgiving season for your family and all military families in on-base housing. Respectfully, Autumn Seibel, aka go fuck yourself, bitch. And then picture of me and my kids in on-base housing where we had a literal rat infestation that was so bad that they chewed through the wires in our Wi-Fi. And then Mrs. Seibel, thanks for your message. I'm glad your family was able to enjoy neighborhood Halloween activities. I am aware of your rodent problem and engage with partners on this issue. Noted with thanks, sir. Like, goddamn, such a douche. Then the housing company wanted to install cameras in our house. And I said, another belated Halloween trick. The Michaels organization would like to violate our family's privacy by setting up cameras throughout our home for an unspecified duration when they've already identified a large wall cavity in the laundry room where rodents are known to be nesting. Interesting approach the partners are taking. I suppose I have to choose between sacrificing my children's short-term right to privacy in their own home or preserving my health to care for them long-term. That's a very difficult decision for a mother to make, not to mention uniformed service member. And then in March 2024, I texted him. I said, good afternoon, Colonel Klein. This is like when the charges had been dismissed. I wanted to be like, you're a piece of fucking shit. Good afternoon, Colonel Klein. I just wanted to let you know on a personal note that the false charges made against me were officially dismissed in the interest of justice. I'm sure you will get all the documents through the appropriate channel shortly. I asked for your help back in May of 2023. I begged for your help in July 2023 to keep my children and I safe. I called you crying in August 2023 to do the same. I texted you in October, hoping you would help. You knew about the injuries my children and I were suffering in those homes, and I made it clear to you, Oscar, Teresa, and Adam Hallrath, all Army housing people, I was not free to leave. Now you all know why. I have prayed for you unceasingly to see the truth, and I will continue to do so. I pray that no other women or children are hurt while residing on the base you command. Be well, sir. And then by June, I was just pretty pissed at him. I said, you're a disgrace to the uniform, Samuel. I stayed silent as long as I could, but you should be ashamed of yourself for protecting an abuser. The Army failed me and my children, just like it failed these 3 little girls and their mother. So it was like a year later. It was when this guy's situation happened, Travis Becker. And then I have some more texts between Autumn, Dan, this is Colonel Klein. Could you please give me a call back? I have a solution for this evening. So like we were in the middle of a domestic violence incident and Klein is like calling us and I'm the one calling crying. But you don't see that in any of the reports, do you? And then Dan writes, thanks for the call, sir. I appreciate you working. More options for us tonight, but we are set in the Del Monte for this evening. I'll be sure to get with Julia on our timeline tomorrow. This was when I was trying to like get away from my ex. I said, I am staying at the Del Monte with the baby. Our older daughters are sleeping at a friend's house for tonight. And they said, I understand. Thank you for letting me know. I said, thank you for answering my call. I sent the parks multiple emails today requesting answers. At 4 p.m., they offered to pay for boarding for our dog, but before close of business could not secure facility. And it just goes back and back and back and back. And it's like, I'm not sure why Army Housing, who's fully aware of whatever. It's just more being like, why aren't you guys doing your job? He's like, Mrs. Seibel, I appreciate your description of events and anticipate further discussion tomorrow. So he knew that I had him checkmated. I'd already talked to the JAG garrison, which I'm going to read you guys someone's name in this, and it's Matt Shelton, who I had actually consulted with as a client. So like, I don't know how he was then able to represent Klein, but Klein says, as a result of these violations, your presence on a military installation negatively affects good order and discipline of the military community. I'm going to agree with him on that one. As a result of these violations, your presence on a military installation negatively affects the good order and discipline of the military community that I am responsible to maintain. Put it on my tombstone. She tried to escape domestic violence, and the garrison commander's response was, my presence on a military installation negatively affects good order and discipline of the military community that you're responsible to maintain. Yeah, because I called your ass out. Therefore, should you attempt to re-enter or be found within the limits of the Palm installation complex, you will be apprehended and subject to detention by the Presidio of Monterey Police for prompt delivery to the appropriate civil authorities. Violation of this bar order will subject you to arrest and criminal prosecution in federal court pursuant to Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1382, which states, whoever re-enters or is found within any such reservation, post, fort, arsenal, yard, station, after having been removed therefrom or ordered not to re-enter by any officer or person in command or in charge, therefore shall be fined with not more than $5,000 or imprisoned for not more than 6 months, or both. This bar will remain in effect until further notice. If you want, you can submit matters on your own behalf for my consideration. Email them to adlawpalmosja.mail or by mail. As any matters you wish to be provided must be submitted or postmarked within 7 calendar days from your receipt of this letter. And I didn't actually get this until the 24th of December, which is Christmas Eve. Now, something I want to do really quick is pull up my Form 95, add photos. Nope, that's not right. I want to do Form 95. And then I want to examine this bar to post and what would we say? Like, examine this bar to post and tell me if it is in alignment with civil rights and the Constitution, as well as the VAWA and ADA Title II laws. Because when my special victims counselor looked at this, or not special victims counselor, when my special victims counsel looked at this, they were like, this is really like out of line. It's not, there's nothing on here that should be permitted. And even if they want to keep it for right now, it should have been dismissed as soon as the other charges were dismissed, but they kept it in place. And so that's what was really like, that's what was the most alarming for me, was the way that they insisted on penalizing me and just like doubling down on shaming and making me making me pay in the court of public opinion, not just the, court of law. Okay. So thank you for sharing this. Let's evaluate the bar to post under the U.S. Constitution, due process and civil rights, the VAWA, victims protection, and ADA, disability access to public services. And then we we'll check the thing when relevant. Okay. So constitutional due process. So the problem is immediate exclusion without meaningful pre-deprivation process. So the order bars me from all Presidio of Monterey housing and facilities effective immediately based on solely on alleged penal code violations. Allegations, which one were later proven to be false and were dismissed in the interest of justice. So I never got an apology. I never got anything but go fuck yourself from the Presidio. Where did it go? Here it is. Okay. So that means like I couldn't get medical care, couldn't get dental care, couldn't, go to the grocery store, couldn't get gas, like on base. Procedural due process, Fifth Amendment, federal actor. Because this is a federal installation, the Fifth Amendment to due process clause applies. Due process requires 1, notice of the specific factual basis, 2, an opportunity to be heard, and 3, a meaningful review process. I was given a conclusionary allegation of a penal code violation, no description of evidence, no hearing, and only a 7-day written appeal window to the same command. That is administrative review, not due process. So courts have held that installation bar orders affecting civilians must provide a meaningful opportunity to contest when liberty and housing access are impacted. So not just my liberty and housing were impacted, the schools where I taught at 2 elementary schools that were on base. I couldn't teach. So they literally deprived me of access to meaningful employment. Okay. Substantive due process. If the bar was issued in retaliation or based on incorrect or incomplete investigation, it can violate substantive due process protections against arbitrary government action. Now, that is where all of my documentation with Colonel Klein comes in, because if we go back, remember, I think I showed you guys this last night. Okay. So we got my dossier, right? Got my dossier. And then what I've done with my federal files is I went month by month. I need to pull these. And pulled all of my old records, because I had when I was doing the mold, like the toxic mold in military housing, and pulling their own policies and procedures. So that's what I'm really an expert in. I'm a World War I content area expert for the Army, but in terms of what my bread and butter with the military is, it's their policies and doctrine. I'm so good at digging into that and understanding where they're not meeting their own, policy and doctrine outlines, which is something I'm going to be working on with another military member with the family advocacy program. And we've kind of found some mutual healing in the realization that there are ways that we can hold these institutions accountable. Okay. So back on April 18th, 2023, April 18th, 2023, I, for about a week, had been trying to get information from Oscar Ordonez, who was the Army chief of housing, and who later I found was doing all these kickback schemes and wasting your tax dollars. Which again, everybody's like, Autumn, why do you care so much? I'm like, well, one, it's making military families sick and they know it. And two, I pay taxes and I don't want to pay into a broken system. Do you? It's the same reason now with all the fraud in Montana. People are pissed, or Minnesota. People are pissed for good reason. Those are our tax dollars being fraudulently used. With the military housing, they know that these military housing providers are leaving families in substandard housing, and it's not okay. So let me pull this up. MHPI compliance letter. Let me pull it up. So this is an open letter documenting concerns to the garrison. I should show you the one that they sent me that is redacted. It's lulz. I'm like, you guys are so silly. Okay, let's grab it. MPI. Here we go. Okay. MPI compliance letter concern, Tenants Bill of Rights violations and noncompliance by the Parks at Monterey Bay and the Presidio of Monterey U.S. Army Housing Office. So this was my letter to the garrison commander while nursing an infant, because Oscar Ordonez was like, why do you want the ground lease? And I was like, because blah, 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 all the reasons I said. And he's like, well, it's a waste of time. And I was like, you know what? I'm on maternity leave. It's my time to waste. And he's like, well, if you want it so bad, then you can talk to the garrison commander. And I was like, fan-fucking-tastic. What's his email? Send him an email. Get on his calendar. I walk in, and this motherfucker, Klein, you're an actual trash bag human. Respectfully, you're so cringe, because I walked in and you were trying to posture, and I think I had my baby with me, and you were like, well, Mrs. Seibel, I hear you're here to complain about, on-base housing. And you were kind of trying to flex on my ex. And then you were like, have you seen this? And you slide the military tenants bill of rights, over to me. which I thought was hilarious. And I was like, yes, I have, as a matter of fact, sir. And here is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 page memo for you of everywhere that your institution is failing. And guys, this is before I knew how to use ChatGPT. This is a real document that I wrote and summarized for the Presidio by myself before Chatty came along. So I'd sent this to him before the meeting and I was like, did you get a chance to read it? And he's like, no. And I was like, here you go. So this is what I said to him. Tenants' Bill of Rights violation and noncompliance by the Parks at Monterey Bay and the Presidio of Monterey U.S. Army Housing Office. So this is where the retaliation started for me. This was when Colonel Klein, I got on his radar. I was a squeaky wheel and he was kind of a douche to me at first. And then he was like, oh, he offered me a job and like wanted to have me help. And then I just became like too big of a pain in his ass. And by December of 2023, he had flipped. But this is how I can show the retaliation. Colonel Klein, the purpose of this letter is to brief Garrison Command regarding multiple documented violations of the Military Housing Privatization Initiative, Tenants' Bill of Rights, by the staff at both the Parks at Monterey Bay and the Presidio of Monterey Housing Office during my time of residency, May 2022 through present. This letter of concern also seeks to provide recommendations for Palm Garrison Command to ensure corrective action is taken that will resultantly afford service members and their families full realization of the rights entitled in the Military Housing Privatized Initiative and the Tenant Bill of Rights. There we go. Acting to ensure military service members and their families, tenants, have access to safe, quality, and well-maintained homes and communities on Department of Defense installations, Congress passed the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2020, setting out 18 rights of tenants while residing in privatized housing. The DOD, through each of its military departments, has committed to working diligently and expeditiously to develop the processes and procedures needed to implement these rights and make tenants aware of them. While it is paramount that residents receive the full benefit of each right, many of the rights set forth by Congress pertinent to legal matters that do not lend themselves to unilateral action by the DOD. Okay. While it is paramount that residents receive the full benefit of each right, many of the rights set forth by Congress pertain to legal matters that do not lend themselves to unilateral action by the DOD. Basically, the DOD signed a bunch of shitty contracts with these private housing providers, and they call them either quasi-judicial or like quasi-state agreements, quasi-state contracts. Although the DOD committed to providing the full benefits of 15 of the 18 rights by May 1st, 2020, more work is required before the benefits of these rights are fully available to tenants. With respect to the remaining 3 rights, access to maintenance history, processes for dispute resolution, and withholding of rent until disputes are resolved, the DOD will continue to work with the Military Housing Privatized Installation Companies, Initiative Companies, and, as necessary, Congress to ensure the benefits of these rights are fully available to tenants. It is the duty of the department to develop standardized formal processes for these rights to ensure service members and their families are able to leverage and then I cited the Bill of Rights, the Tenants' Bill of Rights, and the congressional bill authorizing it. Support available from their respective military departments in addressing and resolving relevant housing issues. Per DOD guidance, tenants seeking assistance should continue to engage their housing office, installation leadership, or chain of command. And then I talk about the Military Housing Readiness Council, which I actually petitioned Senator Sullivan's office to be on back in April of 2023, which was the same time. Introduced to Congress in August 2022 to establish the Military Housing Readiness Council, Senate Bill 4742 and House Bill 8642 seek to monitor compliance by the Department of Defense with statutory improvements to policies for privatized military housing and make recommendations to improve collaboration, awareness, and promotion of accurate and timely information about the privatized military housing. Accommodations available through the Exceptional Family Member Program and other support services among policymakers, service providers, and targeted beneficiaries. The EFM program is for families like if your child has autism or if you have an illness that makes you like non-deployable, they have to like have special housing for your family in like any given duty location that's like within proximity to certain services. Tenants' Bill of Rights violation and noncompliance by the Parks of the Monterey Bay and Presidio of Monterey Housing Office. Right 7, the right of access to a military tenant advocate or military legal assistance attorney through the Housing Management Office of the installation of the department at which the housing unit is located to assist in the preparation of requests to initiate a dispute resolution. So they later did assign us retired, I think he's a captain, Christopher Capozzi, so he's a JAG officer. Right 12, the right to receive advice from military legal assistance on procedures involving mechanisms for resolving disputes with a property management company or a property manager to include mediation, arbitration, and filing claims against the landlord. Again, they gave us that because I demanded it. And they, helped us with the legal office, but a lot of the legal offices on the bases won't help with military housing disputes because it's the same headache over and over and over. And they actually refer you to civilian lawyers, but you shouldn't have to go get a civilian lawyer to sue your landlord if you live in on-base military housing. Make it make sense that you are paying for, that the government is being taxed for, but yet you have to go retain a private lawyer and with your own money. Okay. So with respect to the remaining 3 rights, access to maintenance history is process for dispute resolution and withholding of rent until disputes are resolved. The Department of Defense will continue to work with the companies. Blah, blah, blah. Violation 5. So during the week of April 10th through 14th, 2023, I submitted a written request for legal documentation regarding BAH regulations to Mr. Oscar Ordonez at the Garrison U.S. Army Housing Office upon the referral of the Regional Vice President for the Michaels Organization, Mr. Adam Hay. Mr. Ordonez initially waived off my reasonable request in a manner similar to that of Mr. Hay for information on the ground lease agreement signed in 2003 that permits the Michaels Organization via their subsidiary, the Parks at Monterey Bay, to collect increases to the service member's BAH without authorization by the service member. Information on BHA remittance versus deposit dates back to specific military branch billing entities and the parks and the permissibility of the parks collecting rent fees for unrealized amenity usages that the parks has banned or prevented military service members and their families access to. Too long, didn't read. These housing companies are violating state rent increase laws. And I busted them. Me and another mom busted them on that. And we were going to cost them literally millions if we were successful in clawing back those overages. And we actually were. And that happened after I left, but you kind of have to have a posse of informed military families to pass that institutional knowledge on. And so they just kept sniping the moms who knew and banning them from the Facebook groups and whatever. And it's guys, we're literally just trying to get you to follow local and state law, and you're protecting the privatized housing providers. And Colonel Klein was the same way, whereas his predecessor, Colonel Ford, had gone the opposite direction and assisted families. So after following up for access to the ground lease agreement, Mr. Ordonez deferred me to Ms. Teresa Watkins, who's the current Residential Community Initiative Housing Director of the Presidio of Monterey Housing Office. In my subsequent communications via 3 written requests for an alternative point of contact, I stated my unwillingness to seek assistance from Ms. Watkins, as she was the former Community Director of the Parks of Monterey Bay, concurrent with my time of residence. I would explain that Ms. Watkins wouldn't be the best advocate. Okay, I'm going to skip all this, but basically, the employees bounce between the private housing contractors and then the military civilian jobs, and then they rotate to other bases. And that's just kind of how they keep the money train rolling. And if anybody ever gets caught, editing the maintenance requests that these companies get bonuses for completing, they usually just blame it on a community director or an assistant director or somebody really, really low when they're being directed from on high to do this. And then the companies just bankrupt themselves and then they just re-perpetrate, rinse and repeat, new name, same base. And honestly, I'm not even going to go through and read all this. Basically, Ordonez told me to kick rocks. He incorrectly told me to file a FOIA with Norfolk. I ended up chasing it down. And then I was here's a recommendation, retain the ground lease. And then I gave it to them and blah, 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 blah. Okay. So you guys, this is a wild like a wild summary, and I've got obviously all my emails, all my documentation. It goes on and on, right? I have all the receipts for it. So that's from April 2023. I need to write that like plus enclosures. Okay. So I have it all, right? Shows that I was a squeaky wheel and they were not happy about it in April of 2023. They tried to shut me up by giving us like a really big house. They put us in the biggest house on base, but the biggest house on base had an active rat infestation. I was like, thanks, guys. So it had mold. They cleaned it of the mold before we moved in because my son and I are both allergic to mold. And then only for us to move in and discover that there was like a really bad rat infestation. Then I do my FOIA for the ground lease in May 2019. I get it back in June 2019. And this is where the fun really starts because I asked for a congressional inquiry by Senator Sullivan to understand like why this housing, this unsafe housing has been reported to Congressman Panetta, who's the local representative in Monterey County who used to be in the Navy, but he's done nothing about it. A local journalist told me once that when she interviewed him, he said he would do something about it, but there's nothing in it for him. Yeah, he's a Democrat. Take it for what you will. And then, of course, like I said, because policy and doctrine is my kink, I went and I got their privatized housing policy by rank to show that they gave us an 06 housing biddle to like try to get us to try to shut me up. They like tried to bribe me with like the best house in the place. And I was like, all right. But it didn't work. And they were like, Autumn, get your shit together. And then fast forward, we've got my congressional inquiry to Representative Panetta and Senator Sullivan and the military. Charles R. Hamilton, the general of the U.S. commanding army, basically comes back and is just like, meh, kick rocks. Like, this is just kind of par for the course with these housing disputes. And yeah, like no action, right? Nothing meaningful. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for my ex-husband and I, because he had put so much into that fight that then when they were like, okay, well, you got to go the civilian route. And then he started lying under oath about the condition of the house and like backtracking. It's like, dude, like you already submitted all these documents under oath to a lawyer and now you're lying on the stand. Like, not a good look, especially as a uniformed service member. So his pattern of lying is like pretty well documented and has been seen by lawyers to the point where they're like, we don't want anything to do with this guy. He's radioactive. And then, so our congressional inquiry came back November 1st, 2023. And then the false arrest after my ex-husband put me in the hospital for the 4th time on November 17th, 2023. The false arrest by Presidio of Monterey Police Department. So we're going to pin it there. And that's where I'll pick up tomorrow, because all of that was to tell you guys kind of like why it is so important to get your documents together before you try to file a lawsuit. Because one, it's going to take 6 months for them to come back and say kick rocks. And you want to have like enough that when they come back, you can send them what you have. And then based on their response, keep digging, because you already know where to go and get that information, or where you've been unsuccessful in getting it. And then here's the secret. If they've got you flagged, like me, they got me flagged, right? Get somebody else to do it for you. And there's a lot of different ways that somebody can do a FOIA. And there's a lot of different like institutions where you can get that information through like a secondary. Like I tried to get the ground lease through the Norfolk, Army Corps of Engineers. They didn't have it. And they said, who you should contact is the San Francisco, where did they tell me to go? I can't remember. they told me to go to the San Francisco Presidio, and then that's where I got it. And I actually got it from a librarian. A librarian, contact your posts, historians. If there is a museum on base or on post, go there, because like they know where the bodies and policies are buried. Okay, so somewhere in here, I have all of my records from my Special Victims Council. There's over 600 documents that they sent me. I've got those all saved to a Dropbox. I haven't printed them because that will just be like more evidence of what we did to try to get the ban dismissed. But on December 2nd and December 13th, no, July 30th was my victim's disposition 2024, basically saying like, I'm the victim in the case against Colonel Seibel, and this is what I'm, this is my preference of how I prefer him to be charged. Because by that point, my advocates had, very much witnessed that there would be no responsibility on his behalf unless he was forced to take responsibility, which is why we are going through this exercise of publicly sharing this information, because, I'll pull up the email from Captain Perez where I said, am I allowed to talk about my military case? And he goes, absolutely you are. So the best part about this military case, this Form 95, is now that I'm filing a lawsuit and I've already stated my damages, I can then go through and say like, okay, so here's the military record. Here is the civilian record, where the civilian record says that they reported to the military. And so I can share all the civilian records. But I'm like, but they don't show up in the military record. So where is the disconnect? Who should I be talking to? Is it the Presidio of Monterey Police Department who didn't take those and document those, or CID? Or is it the County of Monterey? And that's why I'm doing the two. That's why I'm doing the county clerk for like the public doxing. And then I'm doing the state of California, and specifically the County of Monterey and the federal government. So like, I'm going to the federal government first, because that's like where the problem really is. But if they try to kick it down to like the sheriff's office or the Presidio or the police department, the Monterey Police Department or the Pacific Grove Police Department, I can then just go straight to the county's claim agent. Remember, it's the county's third-party claims administrator. And again, that's why no work is bad work. If you're doing this work, just keep it all, because it'll all eventually, like at some point, you will get to the bottom of the bureaucracy, and you'll either have answers or you'll have a deficit of answers and a void that needs filled. So after we put in my victim's disposition statement, which clearly showed that I was a victim and I had Special Victims Counsel, and even after I was deemed the victim by the Family Advocacy Program in November 2020, after a nearly 52-week investigation, the new garrison commander, Colonel Artino, who is still there, and the Presidio follows my social media, so I strongly advise you guys tag and share this. And he writes me through my Special Victims Counsel. Dear Mrs. Manelik, okay. As garrison commander, Presidio of Monterey, California, you are hereby notified that effective December 3rd, 2024, your bar from the Presidio of Monterey installation complex is modified to authorize your entry under the following conditions. So by then they realized that they had been denying me access to like critical services, and they were kind of like, oh shit, it's been almost a year that we deprived her of access to stuff. So like we could really be in trouble for this. So he said, I authorize access to La Mesa Fleet and Family Services on December 3rd from 10:45 to 1 p.m. for the express purpose of attending an appointment with your social worker. Thanks. Wow, so generous. I authorize access to CalMed Clinical on Presidio of Monterey on December 3rd from 1:30 to 3 for the express purpose of picking up medications from the pharmacy and having blood work completed, which they were closed that day, so that sucked. And I authorize they had like a training. I authorize access to the Ord Military Community DECA Commissary on December 3rd from 3:30 to 4:30 for the express purposes of purchasing groceries. So he literally gave me from 10:45 a.m. until 4:30 to go to 3 different locations, because the Presidio isn't one base. It's like like there's something over here, and then 5 miles, but like 30 minutes away because Monterey traffic over here, and then another hour over here. So I was like, this is literally a joke. You couldn't even, if you put these into Google and you were like, I need to go and do these things, you would have to hit traffic so perfectly at every step. And just like, it's like a joke. It's laughable. I'm like, wow, thank you so much for your generosity of allowing this for one day. Like, queen for a day to go to the Presidio, which shows you that I wasn't a fucking danger to begin with. If you're going to give me the access to the installation at very set timelines where you're going to like have me followed by like Palm PD, which I always went to base with girlfriends after that, because I was just like, I don't trust you guys for nothing. And I always had a witness. It's like, you're actually limiting my movement and you're limiting my freedom. So he says, you must use the most direct route to and from the locations for which I have authorized access within the time frame specified. Upon completion of your business at each location, you're directed to leave the installation in the most direct manner. Your presence at any location not authorized above or outside the specific timeframes is a violation of this temporary exemption. Any violation of this temporary exemption will violate your bar. Violation of your bar order will subject you to immediate removal and possible arrest and criminal prosecution in federal court, pursuant to Title Code 18 U.S. Section 1382, which states whoever is re-entered, blah, 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 right? So it's the same thing. And then he says, you should talk to Matthew Shelton, the deputy staff judge advocate, which is really interesting that he's representing him because he had previously represented me. Bizarre, right? Let's go back to that initial BARDA post. So obviously it interferes with my due process. And then the order is particularly problematic because family advocacy later designated me as the partner of sexual abuse. And under VAWA 34 USC 12291 B2, victims of domestic violence or sexual assault cannot be denied services, access, or benefits because of victimization. Agencies receiving VAWA funds must ensure non-discriminatory treatment and confidentiality. Let's see. Does the DOD receive VAWA funds? They might not, because that's like a federal entitlement. And the DOD is funded through the ND National Defense Authorization Act. ADA Title II, disability discrimination. So if my PTSD or trauma-related conditions substantially limited major life activities, yes, I qualified as a person with disability under ADA, yep. And it applies to federal programs through the Rehabilitation Act of 504 and military installations when providing public services to civilians. So public services like the groceries, the gas, the pharmacy, like all of the things that when you're forced to live in a military town because of your service members' active duty status, they offset the cost of living because they understand that it's mostly a one income family. And like Monterey has the highest BAH in the nation and the highest cost of living. Okay, ADA Rehab Act issues. So the bar consequence. So denial of access to medical or counseling services. Obviously, that's a failure to provide reasonable accommodation. No disability-based review or exception, so the blanket exclusion without individualized assessment, and the no trauma-informed modification process was a discriminatory administration of services. Instead, I was self-referred by other military friends who were civilians out to local services. All right. A base commander must consider reasonable accommodations before excluding a disabled civilian for services they would otherwise be eligible to receive. No such accommodation process is mentioned in the order. So later, a year later, when they give me the BARDA post and give me 4 hours to go to like geographically 4 separate bases, basically, because the groceries were on Fort Ord, the social worker was at like the military, the NPS housing, and then the blood work and pharmacy were at the Presidio. So if you Google it, actually, let's just go ahead and do this. Google Maps. Just to give you guys an idea of how like absurd this is and what they were trying to do. And just why, like, as a victim, you're just like, fuck it, never mind. Like, and the only reason I'm glad that I still have this stuff is like I can look at it now and be like, what a joke. But at the time, it all like nearly killed me because it kept me from my community. It kept me from free housing. It kept me from Botox. That's what we need. Okay. Cancel. Hold on. Okay. What we need is Presidio. Housing. Okay. City of Monterey housing. Okay, now let's do directions. How do you do directions? Oh, directions. Okay. So, gonna go from there to La Mesa. We'll just do La Mesa Village. That's where the housing is. Okay. And then we're gonna go to, no, so it's gonna be to La Mesa, then the Presidio, and then Fort Ord Commissary. There you go. So that's when there's no traffic. Let's do it. Options. Is there a way you can do this like at a certain time? So this is when there's no traffic. When there's traffic, it's so bad from there to there. But that's the distance that they were expecting me to go, is like from here to here to here. It's pretty wild. Okay. Now, civil rights retaliations and concerns. If the bar to post followed, if the bar followed reporting domestic violence, seeking protective services, participating in legal proceedings, it may implicate First Amendment retaliation, petitioning the government, reporting abuse, Fifth Amendment equal protection component, gender-based or victim status, and then they require factual development or legally recognized theories, which I have. And then what's legally valid. So the base commander does have authority under 18 USC 1382 to bar civilians. Immediate bars can be lawful for security or discipline. Written appeal opportunities, typical procedure. But that authority does not override constitutional due process, federal disability law, and federal victim protection laws. So the base commander has general lawful authority to issue base bars, but their procedural due process with no evidence, no hearing or disclosure was weak. Their substantive due process was fact dependent. So it was retaliatory and arbitrary. VAWA protections, ADA, and then civil rights possible. So bottom line, I was a recognized victim, all the things, right? And then it goes on to do the next one. And then there's one more on December 13th that they issued. And it said, Dear Mrs. Manelik, I've considered your request for reoccurring meetings with your licensed clinical social worker of Fleet and Family Services. I authorize access to Fleet and Family Services on December 17th from 10:45 to 12:15 for the express purpose of attending appointments with your social worker. I also authorize access to La Mesa Fleet and Family Services on January 7th, 14th, 21, and 28, 2025 from the same time for the express purposes. If you require additional appointments after January 28th, please have your social worker, Ms. Wilson, confirm those appointments with your special victims counsel, who will forward them to my point of contact. You must use the direct route. Blah, 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 blah. So is retaliatory and discriminatory. And then they even say like, yeah, you can come to base to meet with your social worker who you're meeting with to discuss the domestic violence that we supported your abuser in banning you from base from, even though you're the one with the medical records and the documentation showing that you're a victim. Interesting, right? So like I said, document, and then send it via certified mail. And that is how you hold the federal government accountable. And they unfortunately have 6 months to get back to me on this. So when I send that certified mail tomorrow, I will touch back in 6 months And then what we're going to cover tomorrow is some more false police reports. And then maybe we'll go over public records requests. And that's it. Okay. Thank you guys so much for attending. Whoever was on here the whole time, thank you. There was like one person watching. I really appreciate it. And if you want to leave something in the chat next time, please do, or call me. All right. Bye.